Hey there everybody, it's Eternal Snowman here for another episode of BLT Recap and Analysis. This time, we're going to be looking at Week 2 and then going back to do predicts for Week 3, including thoughts on my own matchups, mainly because I have just played my game and I did lose, but I will explain pretty much my thought process on this week and also go through the predictions. So stick around for that, or skip ahead in the video if you're more interested in the predictions. So we can start off here with the last week's recap and analysis, or recap and highlights mainly, actually. So we're going to go through each of the matchups, and then I'm going to pick one of the best matchups that really tilted in to the winning team's favor, and the reason why they won or tied the week. And uh, be, and look at why and go through the replay, and I'll pick one from each. So this first matchup, heading into this week, the Bolts needed to win, and a win from the Alakazams would actually secure them the playoff spot. So with the Bolts losing, that means that they are out of playoff contention, and with the Alakazams losing, that means that the group is still wide open with Alakazams, Poliwraths, and Prehistorics all having a good shot at playoffs, and really depend on what this week's results are. So the first matchup here was the Alakazams versus the Poliwraths. MJ Micro was a relatively solid win for MJ. It was him bringing a HYW stall, and it was really solid. And Micro had no real way to break the stall, and MJ won. Male versus Big Boy would be the match I would highlight in, but actually Male kind of got hacked in that game. I'm not 100% on how the game would have gone. However, during the mid game, there was a couple uh, points where, or like the Celesteela actually got hacked out with a couple crits and the scene misses. And if the case was that the Celesteela actually did survive there, then I'm not 100% sure how the game would have gone, but it could have been in either way, but I'm not sure, since it ended up with Big Boy winning by like quite a lot. Um, so it's not really a great matchup to highlight. So the one that we are going to highlight is a highlight match between Sand and Ominous Draco, which Ominous Draco ended up taking. And this is the match. And here we see Ominous bring a relatively solid team with Mega Venusaur as a core defensive pivot, and Mega Venusaur being extremely hard to deal with. Just looking at Sand's team, it's hard already, as it will beat a lot of the stuff on his team. Just like Mamoswine can't really break it. It'll get free recovers on Klefki even if it could get parried. Latias can't really come in safely because of Sledge Bomb doing so much, and it's a check to Sharpedo and Terrakion. So he just started off, and he leads Moltres, and not wanting to risk anything, he goes to his Crocodile, predicting the Stone Edge. And this reveals really nothing other than, well, it really reveals nothing, because here we don't know if Moltres is Scarf or if Terrakion is Scarf, because it could be that Moltres is Scarf, but he's scouting for Scarf Terrakion. So no real knowledge. And he goes for the knockoff, which here he can't kill, so he doubles into Scizor and kills the Mamoswine. And he goes into meta, and meta reveals Life Orb, offensive. Scizor is most likely defensive SD at that point. And he goes into his Crocodile, and he loses the 50-50, predicting the knockoff. This is Scarf Crocodile, so it's most likely some sort of defensive or life form Moltres or something, or potentially Z-move or Z-move Terrakion. Empoleon's probably Spadef Rocks, or Terrakion could be Rocks and Empoleon Spadef like Defog. So with that, Keys is going to be extremely weakened, and he just clicks Earthquake again. I assume he's sacking Terrakion here, but honestly, I'm not 100% sure. It's possible that he was trying to predict a double into Scizor or something else. But I'm not too sure what that Terrakion switch was because it pretty much is guaranteed to be Scarf at that point. Unless it's kind of a Jinx set, but like that's I'm not 100% sure on why that Earthquake went through. Goes into Latios, and Latias doesn't really have a way to touch this Empoleon, so Empoleon kind of just sits on it and gets off a Toxic and just sits on it more because Devastating Drake only did 92 with a crit actually, so it's pretty insane how little damage that did. And Omnis Draco makes a very ballsy play to go Crocodile and kills the Latias with Scarf knockoff, which was extremely ballsy because in the case that Crocodile actually got hit by the Draco and was called out, then it was potential, or like Latias could have potentially picked up a lot of kills there. So we see the Mega Venusaur come out, and Metagross really doesn't do much to Venusaur, or sorry, to his team, to his answers, because he has both Moltres and Scizor, but he blows up and kills the Moltres, and that's really not like anything that helps Sand here. And so you can kind of just see Crocodile clean up, because there's nothing that the Klefki can do, and yeah, Sharpedo can't really deal with the rest of his team as he has Venusaur. So he goes for the Ice Fang flinch, which is the correct play because Psychic Fangs doesn't kill. So he doesn't really have a real win condition other than somehow dealing with this this Venusaur. But pretty good game and solid win for Omnis Draco, and it really shows the power of how strong Venusaur is, because like it can threaten so much that you have to like deal with it, otherwise it can just win late game because there's like it's so strong, and it's so tanky as well. So I do think that it's going to be banned within this next suspect test, but good win for Omnis Draco, and that picks up a win for the Poliwraths. The Westwall was favored over King of Crimea, and he picked up a solid win. Snow Jinri won over Belmont Gabriel, which was no surprise considering Ziri is a good NU player and Belmont Gabriel is, from what I understand, an RU player, but the game didn't look super close. Magma got kind of hacked against Simbo, but I don't think he played it the best either. But it could have been a better game if not for the hacks. But Simba did pick up the win there. ABPP versus the Cheesin one, probably the highlight match I would have looked at if it went to a tie, or if the Bolts actually won that week. And Saba versus Jaspros was just I don't know, that was not a good match at all. But Jaspros did pick up the win there, which is not bad for him. And the Poliwraths, who ended up winning that week. And the Bolts versus the Prehistorics, Ubers, Byron versus Ham. This game happened after the Prehistorics actually won, so I'm not sure how much Ham tried for this game. I think he just kind of went in and like rolled over, kind of. Dennis versus Charmflash was very good. Dennis did pick up a important win versus Charmflash, who has been relatively disappointing this entire tour. And I think a lot of that has to do with he thinks that he's a lot better than everyone around him and doesn't put in the prep time necessary. And as a result, he hasn't shown the results that 17k warranted. So that's unfortunate. Sturts Lacking versus Sanzi, I believe, was also a game that happened. Yeah, it was a game that happened at the end, and thus not super important. Karo versus Pokemon E3 is the one that we're actually going to go through, as Karo has been a very pleasant surprise throughout this entire tournament. being a relatively cheap pickup and someone that not a lot of people expected to do well, as we thought that he was more out of touch with in Mons that he actually was. So he actually does do pick up a win here. So he goes ahead and goes to um, his Rotom Heat to lead off, which leads off well against pretty much everything on Pokemon E3's team, and Life Orb Salazzle doesn't really do anything uh, versus Mandibuzz. And we see the Rotom come out and be able to threaten Pokemon E3's team. Something I really noticed about this game specifically was it felt really like click in terms of like there weren't very many predictions made, and that was like straight up just a bad one because Volt Switch was always the play. Um, but yeah, so like we see here, like Caro is just pretty much clicking buttons, going into the super effective Pokemon and trying to deal with the opponent that way. And a good way of dealing with the Subseed Shaman set is just Volt U-turning out around it, especially with stuff like Mandibuzz. Like U-turn Mandibuzz is a really good answer because Shaman will never get the recovery. So it's just getting chipped down slowly. And so like you see here, like whatever Kara's just pretty much going into the answer to whatever Pokemon that Pokemon E3 has at the moment. But it works out as uh, he just goes to his Toxicroak and picks up a few kills because Toxicroak doesn't really have a solid answer on E3's side. Although this is a pretty suspect series of plays because he actually could have went Steelix that lived the hit instead of sacking both of his Beware and his Salazzle. And at this point, the game's pretty much over as Rotom pretty much just cleans up from this point. Rotom plus once he Z's with Shaman, the Shaman has no answers. So that's about it for this one. Not really the best match itself, but I wanted to highlight that Caro was doing a lot better than most people expected, and that's about it. So JR Smash versus the Franklin went as a big series, or a long game with JR Smash bringing out the stall. He played to his win conditions for the most part. There were a couple times that I thought were potentially suspect, but ended up winning the game pretty solidly versus Arsenine or the Franklin, who could not deal with the stall very well at all. Osh versus London would otherwise be my highlight match, but because I believe I went through London's match last week, actually I'm not 100% on that, but London has been a very good player in this tournament with him going 2-0 for the Prehistorics, and being able to beat Osh was an important factor as it was one of the matchups that would definitely turn the tables, whether on the bolts if London could win. SMB versus Anime Sans went as expected, and then Richard Pepper versus Poison Adhesive. Don't super remember what happened in this match, but it's mono, and Richard Pepper did manage to pick up a win. I think it was an early win as well. But that was that, and the Prehistorics are now in playoff contention with the Alakazams and Poliwraths, and this week they go against the Alakazams, if I remember correctly. Yeah, they go against the Alakazams, and so it's going to be a tough battle to see who comes out on top there. The next one we're going to go through is the Weaviles versus the Blastoises, and I'm not going to go through my own bracket, but we did manage to pick up the win pretty solidly. Actually, the RU match came down to a activity call, which caused some drama, but I do think that Arc would have probably won anyway, but obviously we can never know because there always can be upsets in these matches. So the Weaviles versus the Blastoises. The first match was Raftel Reshrooms versus Tote, where Raftel Reshrooms brought a pretty bad team, honestly, but better than Tote, who brought the same team again. And like I said before, that if Tote brings the same team, the same Excadrill team again, there's no way that he will win, because it it means that it's really easy to see team, and Hyper Offense isn't exactly in the best spot right now. Holomon versus Lesabreur. Holomon actually played surprisingly well, as after his week 1 performance, I kind of wrote him off as being a lot worse than I thought, but he did manage to show up this week and beat up Lesabreur in kind of a weird battle, but was a win's a win, I guess. Naruto Sage versus Jordan, and that is the match we're gonna go through. Right now, and that is going to be the UU match for this week, the highlight. And just from the get-go, Haxorus is the interesting Pokemon on this side, while Reuniclus and Mega Camerupt are seen on the other side. Just go ahead and start it off. Naruto predicts the Scizor lead and goes ahead and leads Moltres, and it's going to be hard for Naruto to break this this Umbreon because of how fat it is, and it's just hard to deal with. So he goes into his Empoleon to try to toxic the Mantine, but actually Jordan reads it. But he does get up Rocks instead, which is still pretty decent for him. Jordan's Cobalion is going to be setting up Stealth Rocks, and Naruto goes ahead and U-turns out, and the Umbreon's already pretty chipped, which is good, but it's only like part of the battle. So, yeah, Altaria and Mega Camerupt is the switch into alt, and it deals with it okay, but ends up taking a lot of damage, but trades Altaria, which is important, as that's one of the better ways Naruto has to deal with the Umbreon. And then Jordan doesn't have a really solid way of dealing with the Mantine, or sorry, with this Vincoon, other than Mantine potentially, but we'll see later that it's not really the best of answers. And with Reuniclus, he goes ahead and switches out from the Haxorus that is going to Z Outrage, and Koba goes ahead and Corkscrew smashes. I believe Jordan believed that this would kill, but because it's Z Ironhead, if it was Phytinium, then it probably would have killed here, but because the Ironhead is not very strong, it's 160 base, it actually doesn't kill the Haxorus, and Cobalion goes down. And that's mainly important because without Stealth Rocks, it's really hard for Jordan to pressure this Moltres, because his team isn't really fit to pressure it. And also that Naruto will be winning the Hazard War more often because his Stealth Rocker can pressure the enemy Defogger with Toxic. And once again, we go into the Moltres, but because Jordan predicts it and goes into the Umbreon actually picks up a free heal, or would be free heal, but he gets confused with the Hurricane, and Jordan chooses to not risk it again, and so he's going to go for the burn on Empoleon, which he gets, where Naruto is trying to prevent, I assume, the Scizor from coming in for Toxic immunity. And so he's going into his Moltres to try to deal with the Scizor. And Jordan just goes to Mantine, which is a pretty solid answer to Moltres. As you can see, the Hurricane doesn't really do that much. So Naruto U-turns out into his Empoleon. Once again, Empoleon being the answer to Mantine because of its ability to Toxic it, which is important. Jordan reads that actually, and he goes into his Umbreon. And this is where he's trying to pick up a free heal with his Umbreon, and goes ahead for the Wish, and Empoleon doesn't do enough to Umbreon, so it actually manages to get the heal off, which is very important. I think I would have gone for Stealth Rocks here, but I think that might have been a little bit risky. And then Jordan goes for the heal bell on the Toxic to prevent him from taking extra damage, as Naruto actually goes for the Stealth Rocks, and Umbreon is going to pick up another heal. And at this point, a lot of Naruto's work has disappeared because now Umbreon is back at full health. But he does manage to keep rocks up in this scenario, which is pretty good for him. And so he's just trying to weaken the Umbreon in some way, but Umbreon actually does beat Crocodile. And we can see here, this is part of the reason why at the beginning I said that it's going to be really hard for Naruto to deal with Umbreon because of the wish passing, and it's just really hard to be able to bring it down. So because of that, we see this dynamic of Naruto kind of trying to pivot around and somehow deal with it. However, Jordan, he does catch the Scizor on the switch with Empoleon Scald, which is very good for him, and brings Scizor low and makes Empoleon even more threatening for Jordan to deal with. But also Reuniclus is very dangerous, as with the CM set here, it's not like Jordan has, or sorry, Naruto has a very solid answer. And we later find out that actually Reuniclus doesn't have any way to hit the Crocodile, and that's why he's can't like, this is one of the reasons why Jordan can't win this game, is mostly because of that reason, as without any way to hit the Crocodile, the Reuniclus actually ends up being kind of a useless Pokemon in this matchup, whereas everything else can be quite useful. And the reason why he loses in that scenario is because he actually gets PP stalled out versus double pressure plus the Reuniclus actually getting PP stalled by the Crocodile. And Naruto chooses to trade his Haxorus for a lot of damage on Mantine, which ends up being important as it gives him an edge up, especially here as Moltres is given the green light to pressure. And so it's really hard for Jordan to deal with this, as I think that's like even pretty much, right? So like if he didn't get hit with confusion, he would have got the protect off anyway. So Jordan is pretty much just stalling. And on Naruto's side, there's like a couple win cons, which is that either Umbreon runs out of PP, or in some way that he gets confusion haxed and manages to kill it that way. So he needs to somehow deal with this Umbreon that is really hard for him to deal with at the moment. But I think he kind of messes up here because that this gives Mantine a potentially free in, which is really bad. Like here, Mantine is given a free heal. I believe that, yeah, Jordan does capitalize on it, and because we don't know Naruto's last move, but I assume that it's protect or something of that nature. Like if it was knockoff, then he would have knocked off there. But because the Mantine is given back a free heal, then it's going to be a lot harder for Naruto to actually pressure again. So once again, back into the same scenario that we were at the beginning. And so we go back to the game of playing hazard control and status control, PP stalling. And this is really important about when Jordan foul plays as well, because if you're foul playing the Moltres, it actually does help a lot for Naruto to do that. And so Jordan does have to end up sacking his Scizor because of the uh her or the confusion. Okay, but I will say here that the confusion hacks helped a lot for Naruto, but at the same time he did on the previous turn miss Hurricane. So in the case that he hit Hurricane and then hits Fire Blast right after, then it actually would provide the same scenario. So while Jordan may have uh may have technically like gotten hacks out of this game with that one confusion, I would say that in general Naruto is actually favored in that specific scenario. And Jordan actually kind of messed up by not healing instead of going for heal bell instead of healing. And from this point, um, it's pretty much just a game of PP stalling, as it's really hard for either team to kill the remaining team members. Um, and so we see the Suicune reveal Vinkun and pretty much just go for stalling, as he actually predicts the Reuniclus to switch in, and we see Jordan reveal Acid Armor. And while this may seem really cool and stuff, the problem with this is that because he revealed Acid Armor, it also means that he cannot attack, and that is like a huge issue, because like attack the Crocodile specifically, because in any scenario that he has to have Psychic Stab, so if he cannot kill the Crocodile, it means that it will come down to like PP stalling. Um, and PP stalling obviously is not the most fun, but we can kind of just skip through, as at this point it no longer matters. Um, because he reveals Acid Armor, it also means that Reuniclus cannot touch Crocodile, and so he gets the double to the Suicune on the correct turn, and because of that, he forces Jordan out. And this is because Reuniclus can't touch the Suicune because of Vinkun being sub protect. And so at this point, the only way that Jordan wins from this point is that he needs to somehow deal with the Vinkun. And so at this point, he realizes he's fighting a losing war with Reuniclus, because the Reuniclus will eventually get crit while he can't touch Rinkun back. So at this point, the game is pretty much over, as Naruto just needs to pick up the Scald on Reuniclus, which he does, and that is the end of the game. Jordan goes ahead and forfeits, because that game just goes to PP stalling between Pressure Moltres and Pressure Vinkun. So a very solid game that ended up becoming pretty close, and almost one like a few different turns, and it could have gone in Jordan's favor. So with that, that was one of the games that allowed the Blastoises to tie, along with Serene's Grace and Akiko picking up wins, while Mikav lost or beat Luthier, Leo beat Rafua, and Peachy Clouds beat Raj-Shoot. This game was pretty bad. This game was an easy win for Serene's Grace. He brought like a really cheese team. Akiko solidly won over Skilos. Mikav versus Luthier, I don't remember exactly what happened in that game. And then Leo versus Rafua was pretty solid for Leo. So going into this next week, my own team is going to be locked into playoffs, while the Weaviles and Blastoises will fight it out for who gets the last slot. And what the conditions need to be is that the Blastoises actually need to win, and the Weaviles need to lose for them to lose that playoff spot. If the Weaviles even tie, then the Blastoises have no shot. So going into week 3, we will do the predictions now. And after predictions, I'll talk a little bit about my own team because, well, during the predictions, kind of. So, the first team, or the first matchup will be MJ versus Ham, and this is going to be definitely the highlight of the week, and 100% probably the best match that this BLT will have for Ubers, at least as of so far. I think that these two are probably the most interesting battle, mostly because of history, as the two of them are good friends and we've helped each other. Myself, MJ, and Ham have helped each other a lot in building teams, prepping, all the stuff in Ubers. Like we practice a lot together, so I think it's going to be very interesting, and I'd expect to see some really, really insane techs and insane, like just a lot of different fun stuff. Sand versus Dennis the Menace is going to be pretty good, especially after Dennis coming off the win with on Charm Flash. But Sand once again is not someone to sleep on, and he is definitely one of the best OU players in this tour. Although he did slide down to UU last week, I do still believe that his OU is his strongest tier, and it's going to be the one that he has to prove on. The other Boras, Mega, or Fejiro has not shown up in this tournament. Although I do still have belief in his play ability, I do think he's a little bit better than Sanzi, who has actually shown up even less than Fejiro. And so I'm going to give it to Fejiro in the UU match this week. And Carolina versus King of Crimea. While both players are really good, I think that Caro has shown that he's willing to do whatever it takes to win and be able to do those things and execute well, including cheesing, including a bunch of different strategies, and has shown up quite well in this tour. I will say that it's going to be a close match and could be either side could take it very easily, but I'll slightly favor Caro just because his recent results have been very, very good. Snow Jinri versus Jared Smash. While I do like Jared Smash as a player, I do think he is somewhat outmatched by Ziri. I will say that Ziri, if he preps pretty well, I don't think Jared Smash has a real shot. I think the difference in skill is quite big. Male versus a London, another highlight match involving London, as he is actually coming off 2-0 against some of the best LC players in this tournament with Osh and wins on Osh and Simbo. So I do think that he's coming off a hot streak. But with the Alakazam's life on the line, I do think that Male is going to step it up, and I'm going to favor Male in this one. ABBP versus Anime Sans. I do think ABBP is a lot better. Anime Sans hasn't shown anything. He's kind of rolled over to both SMB and Cheese, where ABBP actually did manage to take a win off of Cheese. So there is that. And then Magma versus Richard Pepper. I do think that Magma is a lot better than Richard Pepper, so I'm going to give it solidly to Magma. And so that means that without the first match, I do think that it's going to be Sand favored in OU, Fejiro favored in UU, Caro favored in RU, and NU, Ziri, LC, Male, Do, ABBP, and Mono Magma. So I'm going to have to give it actually in 6-1 right now, with MJ and Ham going either way. In the Bolts versus Pastoria's game, the Bolts have nothing really to do in this game, so I don't think they're fielding their strongest lineup. I would say Charm Flash is favored over Micro by a good amount. Arsenine versus Big Boy, I would favor Big Boy by a lot. I would favor Ominous Drake over Sir Slacking, who has not shown up very much in UU. In RU, the Welsh Wall is heavily favored over Pokemon E3. Plaz versus Twixtree is probably going to be one of the closer games. I would say that Twixtree has more on the line because his team wants to win, and so I would actually give it to Twixtree just based on the fact that I believe he's going to prep and try much harder than Plaz, who doesn't really have anything to gain from winning this game. Osh versus Simbo. For much of the same reason, I'm going to say Simbo, as Osh doesn't have much to gain from this week as well. And it's important to note that because of the timing of BLT, when you have very little to gain, it's hard to actually justify prepping and tryharding. So I'll talk about this a little bit later, but I'm just going to preface by saying that this is one of the main things I'm going to be taking into account when doing these predictions. So SMB versus Jaspros, I'm going to say SMB is heavily favored, and Poison Adhesive versus Belmont Gabriel. I don't know how good Belmont Gabriel is at mono. However, I do think that Poison Adhesive has been pretty disappointing. So if Belmont Gabriel manages to get a decent matchup and plays decently well, I do think that he's going to be favored. And noticeably absent in this lineup is the Cheesin one, who I believe actually quit, which is very unsportsmanlike in my opinion for BLT, because like just for the fact that people spent a lot of money to buy you as a player, and quitting is just, I feel like, really bad for both the team and like letting down your managers. So with that, I do think the Polyraths are going to win this one, 6-2, and that is the predictions. And that means that if those two happen, then it's going to be Polyraths in the first seed and Alakazams in the second seed, going into playoffs from the Eevee group. And from the Pikachu group, I will not be going through my own, but I will talk about that at the end. So the Blastoises versus the DNCs. Whale Jesus is pretty bad. LK APKD is also pretty bad, so I don't know who's going to win. It seems like LKAPKD, oh my god, did get some pretty good Ubers help last week, managing to win, and I believe that's because Frisso helped him prep for that. And while Frisso isn't a top tier Ubers player, he does have the basics down. So I do think that LKAPKD is going to win based on that. Beds versus Sharp. I don't 100% know on either side, but I would favor Beds slightly, just because I believe Sharp is kind of out of touch with Mons, as he hasn't played a lot recently. Naruto versus Cream, I'm going to favor Naruto as someone who has played pretty well last week, and Cream has been not as good in recent weeks, with 2 losses already to both Jordan and keeping it icy. So I'm going to favor Naruto in this one. Morgan and Nart versus Serene's Grace, I think, is a clear Serene's Grace win. I think he's shown that he can pretty much beat these lesser known or not as well established RU slots and take advantage of them with either the cheese strats or just solidly beating them out. Akiko versus Good, I'm going to be favoring for Akiko, pretty much as I believe Akiko is as good or better than me, and I won pretty solidly in NU last week. Fee versus Luthier is going to be a very close match. I'm going to favor Fee though. Both have not performed very well heading into this match. However, I do think that they can both bounce back, as they I do think that Fee in general will be able to bounce back a lot better than Luthier, as Luthier is more of an emotional player, and with that said, I don't think that he can bring it back as well as Fee. Frisso versus Rafua, I'm going to be favoring Frisso pretty heavily in this one. Although he did lose last week, I do still think he's one of the better doubles players in the pool. Spitfire Arcanine versus Raj.Shoot. And both of these players have not shown much, and once again, Mono is just a very hard tier to judge because, first off, it's not very... It can rely a lot on matchup, but also a lot of it comes down to the fact that the mono pool that we have is very mediocre. So that's about it. So for the last matchup, I'm going to be favoring, or no, I have the DNCs winning Ubers, favored in OU, LC, and doubles, and then mono is going to be a throw up, and then Blastoises are favored in UU, RU, and NU. And so in that, that's about it for predictions. And so I'm going to be talking a little bit about my own matchup, of which I lost the first game of. Oh wait, Fee actually got subbed out. I would favor Luthier over Silvio Guacamole just because I think Luthier is a better LC player. So in that case, it's 4-3 with Mono being a throw up and 4 in the favor of Blastoises. So two of our players actually have already lost, myself and Silver, both of which we were undefeated going into this week. And part of it is that I said to to the entire team that we can bring memes this week or just not try as hard. Mostly, okay. And I think that some people, I've heard a little bit of criticism recently with how we've dealt with a couple of the things. Like first, coming with the end of last week, we got the activity win. Well, first off, I want to say that to those people who are criticizing us for taking the activity win, that it's how the tours should be run, team tours, and Arc does deserve the activity win. And also notably that a team should do whatever they can to win. So that's just an important rule of thumb. The second is that when looking at this stuff and why we aren't trying this week, there's two main reasons I'm going to list. And one I kind of referenced before, but so the one is that it's not a good idea to reveal our strategies and go into these things trying hard because revealing these strategies could potentially bite us in the back in the future, as some of these ideas that we could have could be run in the future that could be run more successfully. And the other thing that we can do, and the other reason that this isn't always a good idea, is that the reason that I'm not trying hard, and kind of by references earlier, because of the timing of BLT, there is a lot of different tournaments that are going on at this time, and most notably is Grand Slam. So for myself, and I think that this is the case for a lot of other people, that we have a lot of different things going on with Grand Slam, BLT. Myself, I have Cap Team Tour, and obviously I'm running this channel, and I have other stuff going on as well. So I don't really have the time and energy to prep extra time for this tournament, as opposed to just going in and playing for memes for fun, essentially. So with that, that is like one of the main reasons why you may see me play less serious, or our team play less serious for this week. And I think that that is just like how it should be. If BLT was during a different time that it mattered, like as in I had a lot more time to do those things, then yes, that would be something that I would still be playing like more serious potentially, but it's just hard for me to actually justify playing serious when I have so many other things going on. And so that's about it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed. And I'll see you guys next time for more BLT content. Because I've already played and it was kind of a meme game, I actually brought Mono Ice here. It was pretty close still. I almost won, but it was still a meme game. And because I already played my game, there actually will not be a recap and analysis for week 3. However, I will still do a recap and highlight video for the week 3 wrap up, and I'll post that next Monday. So look forward to that. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys for the next recap and highlight video.